Round two, everyone.
Welcome back to Watch Pack. We're going to be doing Phase 2. We just did Phase 1. If you haven't watched our Phase 1 tier list ranking, go watch that. We're getting into Phase 2. You want to start it off?
Yeah, let's start it off with Iron Man 3.
Directed by
Shane Black.
Shane Black, not Jon Favreau.
Yeah. Everyone, the one movie that we can all say is better than the second film, and that's about it. I give it a B. I really do like this film a lot better than the second one, and there are things to enjoy, but there are stuff that, that I don't like either. Not as much as I think a lot of people do. I guess the bad stuff first. When everyone always talks about this film, the one thing they usually like to talk about is the scene where he just up and gives a terrorist on live TV his home address and everything, and people think like that's the biggest, dumbest thing that's ever.
Really? Because I love that scene.
Yeah, I love
because
that scene.
That's true to Iron Man's character.
Yeah.
That's something I don't mind because he would do that.
Yeah.
Because he actually is. I'll give my ranking in a minute.
Yeah.
But he's dealing with those panic attacks, anxiety of what happened. He's in a state of he wants to show that he has no fear because inside he is afraid. And that's a very Tony Stark thing to do.
Yeah, also, a very impulsive thing, which, is kind of par for the course for Tony. Yeah, I have no issue with it because, he's a celebrity who has, big get-together birthday, he was at a birthday party in his armor, at his own house where everyone knew who he was. And the villain of it had his plan for years about this.
He can find out where he lived without him.
His home address would be the least of his worries.
Yeah.
Okay, so as what I think of the movie, yeah, it's a B. It's not as good as the first one. There are a lot of things that this was the point where it started to feel like, I don't want to say like a Disney, product or whatever, but it was starting to feel sort of like that. What I do, there's not really a whole much to really have to say about it. It's just, I guess it's kind of like, Incredible Hulk is where things just sort of are not as very, there's nothing really too bad or too good about it. The one things I will enjoy about the film is that what we were saying, it goes through, Tony's journey and everything, having PTSD. I think a lot of people always feel like, really, after Avengers, that he's just now getting PTSD. But I think it goes back to him fighting in the wormhole and
aliens.
With aliens and God and demigods and everything. It goes into the idea that when he went into that wormhole, that was it. There was no coming back from that. And usually what Tony does whenever he solves a problem, he either builds the solution or he throws money onto it. That was a situation where neither of those things were on the thing, so that was it for him. And miraculously, he survived. So I could see why that would get to a person, And I think a lot of people always say, well, Iron Man is barely in the movie. And it's like, dude, Tony, it's Tony, guys.
Which he says in the movie, I am Iron Man.
Yeah, he says it in all of them, And him just, going through, back to basics pretty much, the whole scene where he's talking to that kid, it's like, you're a mechanic, yeah? Why don't you just build something? It really just comes down to simple stuff like that. And that, with that kid, that could have gone really sappy, schmaltzy, lame, territory. But they got a good kid actor in this. He didn't overstay his welcome. He was there just enough for it. And it did kind of feel like, in a strange way, it did kind of feel like the intensity was, upped because you had all these, bombers coming in and just blowing people up and whatnot. One of, his bodyguard friend was, hospitalized, might not have come back. He had two of romantic interests, pretty much one shot, one presumed to be shot, and the one that he was trying to, survive and trying to keep safe and whatnot. And yeah, so I don't know. I just really, I guess I had a lot more to like about it, but yeah, at the same time, I don't say it's not as good as the first. I did like the third act a little more.
All right. Here I'm about to just ignore all that. Iron Man 3, I really want to give a D to, but I'm going to give a C to. I have it at C because I do enjoy it more than Iron Man 2. But there's plenty of things in here that would push it into D territory. The only thing that keeps
I already know what you're gonna say.
The only thing that keeps it in C territory is I do enjoy the character arc of Tony in this movie compared to 2. It's a very compelling arc. He's compelling in it, and that's what really kind of pushes it up to C. But also, I think Shane Black did a good job. But some stuff goes in D category in this as well. Does a good job of kind of subverting expectations and doing what he wants to do with it. But this feels like a Shane Black film. It doesn't feel like a studio film.
Yeah.
Which was the problem with Iron Man 2. So I give it its props in that.
Right down to it being taking place in Christmas for some reason.
Yes. It's a C for me, though, because it's not a movie I want to rewatch, and there's a lot of things in it that I don't enjoy, but there's just enough to keep me on that playing field. The third act is my least favorite part about the movie. I prefer the first 2 acts, because the third act is the stupid reveal that Ben Kingsley...
No, that's halfway.
That's halfway?
Yeah.
Okay, then I don't like the last half of the movie.
Because the last third is, finding like all the...
Oh, yeah, I know. I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But
let's get to this part.
But old boy who plays the fake Mandarin, he was terrifying. Like, it gave me the Osama bin Laden vibes.
Yeah.
With the thing. Like, you really...
I mean, just look at that guy.
With, like, all the imagery, it felt like Osama or like a terrorist. You really felt that, and I liked that dynamic.
And they were building him up in the first film, too.
And for Tony to be going against that, I really liked that fearful, that terrorist dread. But then he ended up being just a joke. It was just a joke. And I didn't like that. I do think that Shane Black subverted expectations, which is cool in the same instance. But they did that to him, threw him away to give us a whack villain in Guy Pearce's character, who I do not like as Adrian. And that's one of the things that's like D quality to me in this movie, is that he just gets like these he's just breathing like fire powers. And he just has like the dragon tattoo on his back. It's like a really dumb like character design to me, and I didn't like him as a villain. And I did not like the final act with all these suits just coming off. It was like, especially with Pepper Potts getting in the suit and the way she like flipped over and got the like. Not a fan of it at all. Like the whole last act felt very lackluster for me. But I didn't like the writing with
maybe I didn't like it as much
with the Mandarin and all that. I didn't enjoy it. The things I did enjoy about the movie was the PTSD thing, the panic attacks. I love his interaction with the kid. I actually would have liked more of it, because that is what I liked in the movie. I love their interaction. I could have spent more time with those characters compared to seeing Guy Pearce on screen, or his like former flame interest wasn't interesting to me at all. And then I didn't like the way it looked, like with the villains. Like, it was very generic TV quality to me with the villains and the fire powers and the way that it looked. I did like Happy Hogan, which we haven't talked about him at all in the other movies.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's great. And he's great in this one, too. And he was like, I'm telling you something with this guy. He's like, I am bad. Like, that humor lands very well. And I did like Tony telling old boy, oh, you know where to find me, blah, blah, blah. And I like him struggling with his insecurities. And I did like the where you heard his thoughts, which you don't really get a lot in the Marvel films. I did like that. And I did like how the movie ended when he's like, well, truth is, I am Iron Man, like with or without the suit.
Right. And, I was even going to point out, we were talking about the villain, it's like, because I know I never read the comics, but I know that this much, is that he's supposed to be like some sort of space wizard, or the Mandarin is supposed to be like a space wizard or whatnot. And I'm thinking, I don't think that would have really worked in Iron Man 3. But now you pointed out, you have a guy who's breathing fire and doing like all these things. It's like, why wouldn't you make that work in Iron Man 3?
Well, that's science.
Oh, well, I mean, it's like, it's Asgard.
It's not magic rings. Even though they use the stones later on.
Yeah, but and again, like, something I just kind of noticed that with all the Iron Man movies is that, even if even if I might have been silly, I too was excited to see, the awesome Ben Kingsley go up against the equally awesome Robert Downey Jr., but all we get is...
My name's Trevor.
Yeah.
I'm an actor.
Yeah. But all we get is another asshole in a suit. And that's really what I think about. Who's the villain in the first film? An asshole in a suit. Who's the villain in the second film? It's supposed to be Mickey Rourke, but it's another asshole in a suit. And in the third one, we get another asshole in a suit. It's like, give us comic book villains, my guy. But
I think so. I'm a C. You're a B.
I'm B because I do like it more than it's more fun to watch than
Iron Man
two.
2, for sure.
Yeah,
I agree on that. That brings us to our next Thor: The Dark World. Who directed this? Alan something, right?
Yeah, the guy who did one of the worst Terminator movie and something from
What Terminator did you do?
Terminator Genesis.
I don't overly dislike that movie.
It's not that.
Terminator tier list to come.
Go for it.
Uh,
And something about Game of Thrones. I don't know.
I'm gonna go first. Thor: The Dark World. Because
Go for it.
I'm gonna start on a positive note, and he's gonna end it with a negative note. Because I'm pretty sure his ranking's probably lower than mine. Man, this is a C for me. It's not. I don't dislike this film. There's not enough in here for me to dislike this film. I think it would be unfair for me to put this as a D. It's a film I don't want to watch again. It's just it is what it is. It's a C for me. There's not enough for me to hate, unfortunately, in this film. I actually, there's some things in Iron Man 3 I probably dislike more than I do in Thor: The Dark World, to be honest. I think Thor: The Dark World is a very bland movie, though, which is why it's just a C. It's very bland, but I think the effects look good in the movie. I think actually better than Thor 1. I think it's a better looking film, but I think the story is bland. The villain is Malekith. It's probably the first. I wouldn't say first because Guy Pearce I think is trash as the Mandarin. But Malekith is a very bland, generic villain. I don't really care for Jane Foster in this movie. I feel like she overstays her welcome a little bit. I don't know if that's me if I'm hating or not, but I don't really care about her storyline with the ether and whatnot, and then transporting her to Asgard because they're the only ones that can cure her. It's just like it was just an excuse to get her there in Asgard. I think the reasons that this movie's a C for me is just the writing. Like I said, it's bland. It feels like a kind of like a studio type, just generic MCU film. Like when someone says generic MCU, this is what I think about. I think about the Dark World. There was nothing new that this was offering us, but I do like Chris Hemsworth as Thor in it, and Loki has a better presence in this than he does in Thor 1. He might actually have less screen time, but I like his whole look in this one. Like him being like a prisoner, but then he does some crafty shit, and he's like kind of teaming up with Thor a little bit. And at the end of the movie, he takes over the throne. Like I like him a lot in this film, and I think that's also what keeps it out of the D territory. Is simply because I like Loki in this film. So for me, I don't have much to say more about this movie. It's a solid C for me.
I would give it a generous D.
That's generous.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Hey, we like to build something up and just to smash it down.
You said bland, and man, you could not be more on the nose on that. It is.
I'm going to add this to my rewatch list because I think I do need to rewatch Thor: The Dark World.
This is, I don't even go even further and say this is straight up boring. And yeah, you said this feels like a studio film. I would go as far as feel like this is just a filler episode of a TV show that you don't think much out of. Nothing about even Asgard. I was building up Asgard like this is all grand and epic in the first film, and this is like background shots you get at Game of Thrones.
Okay,
so
I gotta rewatch it because
yeah,
I'm not remembering the awful backgrounds that you are.
Yeah, it's like. It's not that they're bad, but again, there's like you could see this in like any other show. Like I said, with Asgard or Game of Thrones and whatnot. And again, I do like Chris Hemsworth. I do like Loki. I thought Odin was a lot more interesting. I liked that we saw Heimdall do a lot more in this, even if it was just a little bit.
Idris Elba.
Yeah, Idris Elba's awesome. The little bit with their mother and, you know, the little relationship we had with her and Loki, that was very fascinating. And then
adds more, like I said, it adds more layer to Loki.
Yeah, but when you get to the titular Dark World, it is some of the blandest shit you ever seen. This is like up there with like the Planet X from Fantastic. Like it. Oh, you got a green filter on it. Good. And then they just conveniently found like a.
You know what?
A
now I'm
space
thinking about
pocket.
it. I think that does go against my point of it looking like a good movie because I'm. That's why I said I do need to rewatch this one because now that you're saying it, I'm remembering things of how it looks. So.
Yeah, and the stuff that you know the like I like seeing the Warriors 3 and Sif. You know, even though I do think. I don't know if they're in it more or less than the first one, but the more that we get to see them, I would prefer it. But we don't see them a whole lot. I do like with them teaming up with Loki, and you know that's where it gets really fun. You know, like where do we start? With Jane Foster, yeah, it's not a whole lot there. Darcy and that other guy that they come up with.
Eric Selvig?
No, the other guy who's like. I don't even remember.
Oh, the Darcy finds.
Yeah,
and,
I guess.
Trying to get with.
I guess I don't know. But no, the
intern.
Yeah, the intern. But no, the Aaron Selvig guy. Eric Selvig.
He's on,
yeah. Yeah, he was the guy that we see naked in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
I'll say this: he's probably the more interesting of that group because you see him in the first film, very all skeptic of him being like Norse god to him being like this. Crazed loon who believes in like the insanity. Yeah. I do kind of like the.
He's a good actor too.
He is. It's just him being him being naked and being talking stuff in an asylum or wherever he was at. So yeah, but I'm not gonna act like there aren't good things in it. But at the same time, I could watch whatever Thor Ragnarok or whatever. Yeah, it's. Not a fan at all. So that's Thor: The Dark World.
I think it's a C, man. I'm gonna stand by what I said, even if it looks like how the Dark World looks in bland. There's not enough for me to hate in this film to make it a D. So I'm gonna say C.
Straight up D.
Straight generous. He's being generous.
Yeah.
To Thor: The Dark World lovers.
Because I don't
know if Thor: The Dark World really has fans like that. But anyway, I'm gonna rewatch this film. I'm gonna make a list. That's one I'll rewatch. I'll reconvene and figure if I want to lower my ranking or not.
I don't want to be straight up mean and say that it's an F because there are some things, but I doubt there are many people like, oh, Thor: The Dark World. Yeah, that's the best of them all. Like, I could be wrong. I could be very wrong.
I don't know. Lucifer was coming to us at the comments about Eternals.
There you go. So,
and I didn't think I'd see that. So he did respectfully though. I like Lucifer. Next. One of my personal favorites. I'm going to go ahead and just say it. Captain America, Winter Soldier. Boom. You start this one, and I'm going to end it with an epic praise.
Okay, start it off?
Yeah.
S tier.
S tier for me, too, son. First S tier.
This is, I'd say...
Russo Brothers, first MCU. Go ahead.
This is the Dark Knight of the MCU. I cannot stress that any further. And I'll say this much, because I was one of the few who really liked the first Captain America, and people were forgot about it. When I saw the trailer for this film, it looked good. It looked really good.
It was. You know how many times I watched this trailer before the movie came out?
A lot.
It was one of the best MCU trailers because you had this
it was really good,
intense feeling to it that you just did not get up to this point from the other Marvel films. I think this is the first film that you had that intense feeling. Incredible Hulk, maybe like a little bit of intense with.
But again, we had a Hulk movie already, so
the Winter Soldier was like on another freaking level. Like this movie, as far as filmmaking, there's an intensity and high stakes feeling about it that blows the other ones up to this point out the water for me. But not only that, the fight choreography in this film compared to the rest of the films blows it out the water.
Yeah.
That scene with Bucky and Cap fighting on the freaking little highway thing.
Yeah.
With that music, that like intense, like, oh crap. And they're just like, just blows. He gets the freaking knife and he's like doing the knife against the freaking truck. Like, when I was watching that, it blew me away. I was like, dude, like, this is an MCU film?
Or when
that's when I really thought, like, oh, MCU can be more than what it is. Like, this is very good, like, choreography. This is great. That whole highway sequence was nuts.
Yeah. Or hell, even the opening where he's skydiving out of the plane and going into the ship.
And I love how brutal they made him in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, Captain America, he just yeeted people off the freaking yacht. And he was doing something like, dude, that guy has brain damage.
Yeah.
Like, I love the kind of intense feeling they gave him, and that right off the get-go, just the way the action was shot, you're like, oh, like, this is something else.
And even though, you know, like him fight again, going back to the ship where he's fighting Batroc the Leaper and everything, and he's very accurate to what I hear for he's in the comics. You know, very flamboyant, very performative. You know, leaps and bounds and everything, and they both, you know,
freaking takes his helmet off.
Yeah.
Speaks in another language. I was like, oh, this is hard. This is hard. But also, I liked how you're seeing him in this world still trying to readjust, which is a big theme in this movie, is his trust in, you know, the government factions, which obviously at the end of it, he's kind of like, F you to, you know, S.H.I.E.L.D., because S.H.I.E.L.D. was corrupt.
Yeah. And then we find out that there were still Hydra and, you know, a little bit in there just hidden away.
I think the writing is really strong in the movie. You have the mystery of Bucky.
Yeah,
that's going on, but also the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. aspect, and it's like a espionage feel to it a little bit.
Yeah, this is straight up spy film.
And Black Widow is the first movie where I really like her character. I loved her and Steve Rogers together trying to figure crap out. They worked very well in this movie together.
Yeah, like that's the one thing I want to say. Like, when she was in Iron Man 2, everyone forgot she was even in that. But when Avengers, that's when I started to feel like, okay, there's something to this character. I was feeling
she felt like Black Widow. Like,
yeah. And but they just kept adding it on with this, and here in this one you get a more laid back Black Widow, and who can blame her? She's with Captain America, you know, doing all the heavy stuff, and she's just sneaking in.
I will say, aside from Hulk, the Russo brothers are really good with characters. Which is why in further films, especially when they're dealing with a mass cast, I'll get into that in those films. But they are really good with characters. I love their version of Captain America compared to how Joss Whedon treated him. Joss Whedon almost seems like he has some contempt for Captain America. I'm going to be honest with you. Based on some dialogue, like, he tries to overly paint him in that picture of that goody two-shoes. I feel like Joss Whedon in his heart is like, yeah, Iron Man fucking rocks and Captain America... I'm sorry.
Language.
Yeah, if you watch the Avenger films, and like really psychoanalyze the dialogue and crap, because you know mostly Josh writes his own stuff. I don't think he likes Captain America.
I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, the writing was just so much better on that one. And like you said, with the action, it was all. I don't know, just something about, I guess, just, you know, all of it being there, not just CG being all more visceral and everything. And even the way how it opens up with just Cap and Falcon, who Anthony Mackie does a really great job in this as well. Just them simply talking and being people. That is just really, you know, that's just some, you know, if it was like, you know, any other film, it would just kind of be like filler or just, you know, whatever, just cut out the fat and everything, but it just gives them enough time to just let them be human.
I think the Russo brothers are really good at that, like I had said previously.
And what I wanted to say is, when I saw the trailer, it looked cool, but this is when I was getting into like who was directing or what were the other people's works beforehand. And when I saw that most of their stuff was mostly like TV, I think even like mostly on like comedy, and the only other film I knew that they worked on was like You, Me, and Dupree. That got me worried a little, because I'm thinking like, is this really the best choice for this kind of movie? And as it turned out, it's like, yeah, it's like
Yeah, and to go along with the characters, I think it's Samuel L. Jackson's best performance as Nick Fury is in The Winter Soldier. I don't think there's anything, even in Secret Invasion, I'm sorry, I don't think there's anything as good as what he did in Winter Soldier. But not just what he had, it's what he had to work with. Like, you had this very, like, you really saw his outlook on the world and his dialogue with Steve. But you also saw that he was challenged and Nick Fury was challenged in his own beliefs because of what kind of stuff that had happened throughout the movie. But I really like his action sequence when Hyder's trying to kill him. It's probably the best Nick Fury action sequence in the MCU.
Yeah, like we get more like a more I don't want to say panicky, but a more like we just see them Fury in a more
there's more
serious.
It's more stakes.
Yeah,
it feels like there's more stakes to it. But yeah, the action, choreography, the writing's really good. I love Bucky, who didn't. I mean, he was in the first Captain America film,
and he was good, but
not like this.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, the whole movie is about him. Obviously,
this really did. He really did shine.
Yeah, he's freaking great as the Winter Soldier. As soon as they show him capturing freaking Captain America's shield, that sounds like, all right, yeah, Winter Soldier's dope.
And of course, you have like the scene with like the post-credit scene revealing like Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and
I forgot that happened.
Yeah,
in that movie.
Yeah, and they turned out to be a little more interesting as they go on. So
yeah, the movie never loses steam. Like a lot of the Marvel movies, like the third act, they start going downhill. But this movie, actually, I think the high stakes increase as the movie goes along. When you realize that these helicarriers are about to start wiping people off the face of the earth. And then I do like Captain America's speech in that movie too.
Yeah,
he's talking about the price of freedom is always high. It's something like what they do with him in this movie is superior than his appearances in the Avenger films for sure.
Yeah, and
they add you know what it is? They add a more human element to Steve Rogers.
Yeah, and that's why I say like in the first film, it's good, but he's like very straight laced. But he's at a time and age where the morality is pretty obvious. Like good guys are good, bad guys are bad, and everything. But now he's in a position where he feels like, well, what if the good guys aren't all that good and everything, and it starts to gray and that's where I feel like it starts with here.
Yeah, S tier for me, definitely up to this point with all the rankings. It's the best film.
Yeah,
hands down, easily.
Yeah, and then finally, next we have Guardians of the Galaxy.
Directed by the now DC Studios.
James Gunn.
You can start with this one.
I love this movie. It's an A of mine. I was worried when I first saw that trailer and it showed Hooked on a Feeling and it showed the credits. I'm thinking like, wow, this is going to be different. But I didn't know because when you saw it, it just looked, and you saw like the lineup where they're like taken into custody, and you literally see a talking raccoon, in there. It's like this is gonna be weird, but is it good weird or bad weird? And right as when you see Star-Lord, listening to his music and going up and finding whatever the Power Stone. Yeah, this really did awesome.
It's an A for me. You know what? It could have been an S tier film.
It could have been.
I think it could have been S tier, which there's another Guardians movie that I think is worthy of that. But I think the only thing that really holds me back for me actually is really only one scene, and it's the dance-off scene at the end of the film with Ronan the Accuser. That's the only scene in this movie that pisses me off so bad, to where I almost want to push the movie into that B lane, just because that scene enrages me so much, because it is such a dumb scene. And all that intensity, and I understand it's Guardians supposed to be like goofy, but it's a little much. Like the whole freaking world that they're on is at stake. Ronan's about to get this Power Stone, and then he just starts dancing to distract Ronan. Like it's it's a dumb scene.
Well, I mean, and the plus on the one hand, it did work and everything. It's like
it shouldn't have. That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't have worked, but that is so stupid. But aside from that scene, I do like the writing in this movie. I like the humor in this one, just like it's well placed in Iron Man, it's well placed in Guardians. Guardians,
Yeah.
a movie I feel like you can be kind of goofy with these characters.
Yeah, like to the point where I had no issue with that one at all. To the only real issue is that you had like
We're the Guardians of the Galaxy, bitch. Like,
yeah,
and stupid scene.
I care. I like that.
It's like
stuff
juvenile.
that.
It's juvenile humor to me.
Yeah, but this is one where I don't care if it's juvenile, and I don't care how much if it doesn't make sense. You know, like there's a whole scene, there's a whole line that Rocket says. It's like I've broken into like places that are worse than this. It's like why did you put him in this place if it was so damn easy? And it's like it's a talking raccoon in a tree. Who cares? It's just a fun time.
It is a fun time for majority of the movie, except for that scene.
Yeah, it's like I feel like this is what Lucas was wanting to do with the Star Wars prequels. Just have it be more goofy, more colorful, more, I guess, lively in the way. But you see and even Gunn said that he wanted to have the same feeling of when he first saw Star Wars. Like you have like all these characters come together and in these strange worlds and everything.
I think Gunn also, as we talked about previously with the Russo brothers, Gunn is really good in these movies about characterization.
Yeah, because when
making you feel what the characters feel.
Yeah, and especially going through completely deep stuff. Like if you walked into this film with all watching the trailers that you did, and you open up with a little boy seeing his mother die from cancer, that is not at all what you would have thought this movie would have started out on. But it works. It's not like it's not like Whiplash or anything. It's that it actually pulls it out pretty good.
Yeah, I like Gamora in it. I like Dave Bautista's Drax in it. Rocket, Groot, Star-Lord.
Even like Ronan or like
Ronan, I'd say, is one of the weaker elements of the movie because he's just a bland villain.
Well, I see where you're coming from, but I like him because of how bland he is. He's just like. Even like, okay, when you say like the dance off, he just has this big dumbass look. What are you doing? What are you doing? Like it's something funny about that.
It's not funny for me.
Yeah, and then Thanos in there for like a second is pretty cool. Yeah, not whole much else to say. It was just a fun ride.
Yeah, it felt like an adventure.
Yeah.
And not one that you got bored of. Like I said, for the most part, humor is well done. And I like all these characters interacting. I like these characters interacting more like the ensemble cast than I probably did in the Avengers 1 movie.
I could see that, yeah.
Because of the journey that they're going through together. Not just, let's fight for 5 seconds and now we got to team up type of situation. Like they go through the prison element, and even after that, there's still some bickering with them, and it kind of takes until the end of the movie for them to finally get to that, so it feels more earned.
Yeah.
But also, it did something that none of the other MCUs did up to this point, with the whole space feel to it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also, it feels like a movie that is the director's vision, which sometimes is hard to get across in the Marvel films because of the whole everything has to connect and all the studio notes and studio interference. But James Gunn and the Russos, I mean, Russos have 4 films. James Gunn has 3 in this, but you always feel like it's their kind of film.
Yeah.
For the most part. So.
And it just turns out to be a really fun product.
Yeah, it's a solid day.
Solid A.
That brings us next
to
Joss Whedon's sequel, Age of Ultron, in its beautiful red case. You can start Age of Ultron.
I'm pretty sure I gave the first Avengers a B. I'm probably going to be a minority here, but I give this one an A. I actually like this a little more than the first one.
Dang, son, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, here's the thing. With the first Avengers, I said before, it was the whole point of the first Avengers was just to provide what you were selling. These characters in separate movies coming together, kicking ass one-liners. And it did. And it did exactly that, and it did very well, but it just did that. Here, I feel like I got to know more about these characters. Like 2 scenes that I really like, which are, I say scenes, but they're more like, it goes on for a little while, which I don't mind, are like the scene at the party where you're just seeing like them just being cool people, like there's Falcon and Cap doing, playing pool. There's Rhodey telling stories, There's like Thor and Cap, giving like special drinks to like old Navy soldiers or whatever, and it all ends with lifting up, trying to lift up the hammer, and all of it you can just get everything of what these characters are just on these small moments.
Yeah.
And then like the barn, or the scene in the barn where after they're just mentally just kind of shattered with most of these having like these nightmares and these premonitions of such, they're pretty much unraveling and everything. So what do? They go to a barn to just kind of mend things, or just kind of be at peace with a lot of things and see where that takes them. And I didn't get any of that in the first Avengers. I might have gotten maybe something with like say Widow maybe in the first one, but nothing to like this degree. And like the nightmares of it, like Widow in the Red Room, Cap, returning back to his time, and seeing, or Thor, predicting like Ragnarok and such. All of it just seemed just kind of, for what it was worth, it seemed like it was coming together a little more nicely in this one. And you were mentioning with at least with the first film being a lot more CG heavy, I do like that this one at least tries to get a little more practical in like the action and such. It's not just, computer generated, although they do have them at the end, but it's not all of it throughout.
I would agree to your point about there's more character moments in this film compared to the first one. And I do think the film looks a lot better than Avengers 1. I will agree with both of those points. It's a B for me. It's on the same level as first Avengers for different reasons. Because there's some things they do better, but there's some things they double down on. One is the dialogue. A lot, not the dialogue per se, but the humor element is a lot heavier in this film, and it does not land. And I know that might be like a small thing for some people, but that really does take me out of the movie. It makes me enjoy it a lot less. I can't harp out on that enough. There's a line I always remember that I freaking hate, is when Colby Smolder, how do you say her name?
Colby Smulders?
Yeah, Smulders. Her character, she's explaining Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and she was like, yeah, he's fast and she's weird. And it's supposed to be funny because Scarlet Witch is like this gothic type of girl, but it's such a dumb line because you're reporting intel. That doesn't tell you anything. He's fast and she's weird. That you've given no information, which is what her job is. It's just a throwaway, stupid, supposed to be funny line. But it's a dumbass line. Like, there's a lot of dialogue like that in the movie. And there is more characterizations of characters, but sometimes to the detriment. What they did with Hulk and Black Widow, like,
yeah, Hulk especially,
you never feel that connection between those two, and then you find out that Black Widow can't have kids, and it's like they try to sell you on this romance that you do not feel, and it was always really silly to me. Yo, sun's getting real low. Like, that's what they did to Hulk. Like, yeah, they gave him, I guess, some more layers and characters, but I don't think it's what people wanted to see. And also from Black Widow, find out she can't have kids and she likes the Hulk. So it's like they take characters somewhere where majority of people probably didn't want to see. And then it annoys me because there's some really good stuff in the movie. I like the horror-esque element when they're all talking, and then the freaking robot just comes walking up like a puppet and just starts talking. Like, that was genuinely terrifying. And I'm locked in. I'm like, this is cool as crap. Yeah. If they would have done more of that through the film, but by the end of it, Ultron left. He didn't have that menacing figure anymore as the movie went on.
Yeah, because with Ultron, and at least in the comics, is that he just had that blank, expressionless personality and face, and then they made him, which I personally didn't mind in this version, but I get why people would be upset. They made him pretty much a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
That was born yesterday.
Like, when he first shows up, he's like terrifying, but then it loses that steam throughout the film when he's just like an Iron Man. But,
also, it just kind of shows just how dated a lot of some of these stories are, because when you see what Tony is trying to do and how it leads to Ultron and where it all goes, I'm just thinking, like, what, Tony Stark never watched Terminator?
Right.
It's like he...
Yeah. for sure.
But
another thing, I'm a really big on this. I don't like things done just for shock value purposes. And I felt that's what Quicksilver's death was for shock value. And I say that because I like high stakes in movies. I like people dying, but if it feels earned. Iron Man felt earned when he died in
Infinity War.
Endgame.
Or Endgame, yeah.
Same with Black Widow. You feel those. You feel those impacts, and I like high stakes. But Quicksilver, you just met him. All right?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole movie they built up with the jokes. You didn't see that coming. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Blah blah. Him being fast. Him and Hawkeye. And it just feels like they used it for shock value in the movie when he got all these bullets. You didn't see that coming. And you're right. Like, I didn't see that coming, but I don't really know this character that much. Like, it was like a throwaway of a character that could have been really cool because I liked his portrayal of Quicksilver.
Yeah, Aaron Johnson does a good job in the film.
Took a character off. It just seemed like for shock value purposes is really weird to me. I don't know if they couldn't use him because of X-Men stuff going on.
Yeah, exactly. That was in the same year.
But they had Scarlet Witch, so I don't see how that was a problem as far as the rights or whatever.
Yeah.
But
then again, you could say Scarlet Witch was in like X-Men Apocalypse for like a scene.
Right. So it's like it just came across as shock value, but that's also like just poor like writing to me.
Yeah.
And so it's like things like that keep it from being an A for me, where it's the B. There are some cool freaking moments. I do like some character moments, but beyond that, I don't like Ultron's portrayal. I don't like the stupid language joke that runs through the whole movie. Like, there's more.
It works for me just to see Cap's reaction to it. Because it's not, you're right, it's not a funny joke, but seeing his reaction to it just kind of makes it a little better. Not good, but at least
I would
better.
say Joss Whedon doubles down on the humor in this movie, and that's why
he does.
I don't like it. Like, it and Avengers 1 are right here for me. I don't like one more than the other. They're both on that B. Like, they're entertaining enough to where I would like to rewatch them, but it's not A category.
I like
solid B.
I give this one A because whereas the first one I thought it was just a little too skin deep, and I thought there was a little more to this one.
I respect your opinion.
Nice. As yours.
That leaves us with the last movie in Phase 2, Ant-Man.
What a weird way to end Phase 2.
I'll start off since I had you start the last two off.
You got it.
This one's actually a B for me, but this used to be an A for me. I used to be like a stan of Ant-Man. I actually liked it a lot more than I think most people did when it came out. And I think it's because of Paul Rudd's Scott Lang character. Like, I liked this movie more than Ultron. And actually, I do like it more than Ultron. I still have the same category, but I can't look past the flaws in the movie to really warrant that A ranking, but it's a high B. Between that and Ultron, they're my only two B movies in Phase 2. I'd rather watch this than Ultron. And it's because it's kind of like a lighthearted feel to it. It's a break from all the kind of more intense type of movies, especially like Winter Soldier or kind of Age of Ultron.
Mm-hmm.
And I like going on the journey with his character, but also introducing Ant-Man. A lot of people didn't think that Ant-Man would work, but it does. Like, the film does work. I think the only thing that keeps it from being like awesome to me is kind of a bland villain. I don't know. Sometimes he could be horrifying though. I mean, he turned a dude into like a little pudding, flushed him down the freaking sink or the.
It was almost comical how evil he would be, and all for the right reasons.
Right. So I can't say that he's exactly bland. I think it's like the story's pretty generic.
I mean, I like him more than like Ronan or Malekith.
I think the story is pretty generic to keep it from that A level. But there's some really good, especially when he shrinks down to Ant-Man, like it looks really good. It's a good looking film, in my opinion. And Michael Pena is one of the best supporting characters.
He could have easily been annoying, but he turned out to be really fun.
Like, where other characters you may feel like overstay their welcome, like Darcy or whatnot, but Michael Pena is always freaking funny.
Yeah.
And adds to that really like grounded level of Ant-Man. And you get like a really personal story in Ant-Man. Mm. And I also think Michael Douglas has good chemistry with Paul Rudd. Yeah. That they work great together. And also he has got great chemistry with Lily.
Yeah.
And yeah, the villain's just good enough. Like I said, keeps it from A ranking because like a generic plot. You don't really have to do a lot of thinking or twists and turns. But it's an entertaining movie from start to finish. And you, by the end of the movie, you care about Scott Lang as a character. You care about his relationship with his daughter. And I like kind of the quirkiness in Ant-Man. There's a lot of like quirky type of humor that I really like. For instance, when they're fighting in the bedroom and you just see like the train fall over, like that humor I really like.
Yeah.
It like the humor in this is well placed, but also I do like learning about his powers and whatnot and going through that journey with him. Like when he first puts the suit on and he gets, washed away, and then he's like in the club and they're fucking dancing, and then he's just like, get this crap off of me. Like you really feel that panic because you were with him in that. And so I think Ant-Man's a little underrated, and I can make an argument for it being an A, but I just can't look past some things, so I'm gonna give it solid high B.
Well, I'll give it a solid high A because I love this movie.
Heck yeah, see? I like that.
I mean, you're right, that is a generic story, but to be honest, that's exactly the kind of thing I was kind of wanting. Like, it's very simple, straight cut, succinct. You don't have to watch a plethora of movies to see it. It's not, it's built up for a sequel, but it's not, too bad if you don't see what comes up afterwards.
I'm going to change my ranking. This is an A, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I gave him the peer pressure.
But, man,
this is an A. It's an A film. I'm going to go with my gut.
The one thing I knew about Ant-Man beforehand was that he was just an easily mockable character. And it's not just like with, particularly like the Hank Pym version of Ant-Man. Like, all I knew was
who actually made Ultron.
Yes. But sure enough, not only did Michael Douglas did a great job of making this character, making Hank Pym likable. Because from what I knew is that in the comics, he was just some whiny little bastard, a wife beater, had an like inferiority complex. And it's like, when you have like a shitty attitude and a stupid superpower, you just have a really lame ass character. So I was eerily worried for this movie. And yeah, Paul, it almost has like a 90s Disney live action film, like going back to like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and such, but it's the feeling of this guy discovering this, thing, in this case the suit, and having him do this really cool thing, just shrinking and controlling ants. It's not like, high end stakes or whatever, but it's just fun. And that's the best way I can even describe this movie, is fun. Yellow Jacket is, yes, a very he was one of my more fun favorite villains to do, because just like shrinking goats and having him mess with that,
bringing the next subject.
And even when he became like Yellow Jacket,
or when he shows up to the house with black gloves, he was there to kill somebody,
and
terrifying.
It's like, you can say like the Yellow Jacket suit might be a little generic, but it still looks really cool and everything. And you're right, into it has like a very sweet ending as well, a story about him and his daughter. That's really what it feels like. It's just coming down to like, connection between this guy who wants to get back in his daughter's life, and having trouble with it, and he comes off as just a very likable dude and everything. So
you convinced me. It's an A.
So I really loved it, and
That wraps up phase 2. Let us know your own thoughts about our maybe some hot takes, maybe not. Stay tuned for more.
Love, peace, and chicken grease.